Hi everybody, Douglas V. Gibbs here, Constitution Study TV. Question is the Electoral College. And let me read you parts of an email I received first from a listener, reader, viewer from Nevada. Hi Doug, Nevada is in the grips of potentially adding to the number of votes required to pass the National Popular Vote Compact via Nevada Assembly Bill 186. The proponents claim that the states have the right to change their approach to the Electoral College. And basically, this concept sidesteps the Electoral College by rewarding all electoral votes in each state to the winner of the popular vote in a presidential election. In other words, if Nevada voted red, but the popular vote went to a blue candidate, then Nevada's electoral votes would automatically go to the blue candidate. Then he goes on with a few quotes from the proponents of the bill. Barry Fadum, president of the National Popular Vote, claims the National Popular Vote Compact allows every vote passed in each state to be equal. He goes on to say the reason that it is not unconstitutional is that the Founding Fathers of the U.S. Constitution gave each state legislature the exclusive right to make the decision that they are being asked to make today. All right. Then he goes on to quote, Article 1, Section 4, the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof. But Congress may at any time make or alter such regulations, except as to the place of choosing senators. Okay, well, first of all, that's a false argument, because you'll notice that it says the times, places, and manners of holding elections for senators and representatives, not for President of the United States. The states do not control the manner and procedures, because the manners and procedures of voting for President were established in Article 2 and then tweaked in the 12th Amendment, the 20th Amendment, and I believe the 24th Amendment. So the Electoral College cannot be altered in such a way by the states, first of all. There would have to be a constitutional amendment. Secondly, the elimination of the Electoral College is very dangerous. It is a push for pure democracy. And that's what the Democrat Party seems to want. Pure democracy is a transitional government from republic to tyranny. We don't want to be a pure democracy. We're not a pure democracy on purpose. The Founding Fathers established the system for us not to be a pure democracy, but for us to be a republic. And in that republic, it is up to us to follow the rules that were established by the Constitution. Now, the Electoral College isn't even exactly as it once was. So let me explain that a little bit as well. Originally, the electors appointed by the state legislators were the only ones who voted for president. The people's vote was not consulted. Now, in this era of we believe we're a democracy, the average person would be repulsed by that. No, the people's voice was involved. The people did have a voice, just not through a popular vote or voting. The electors voted, and then the electors were convinced or swayed by the campaigns. Who did the campaigning? The citizens. The people put up their candidates. They're the ones that lobbied for their candidates so as to convince the elector to vote for their guy. So in order for a president to become president, if the people wanted him, it was up to the people to be activists and to rally for him and to get the word out about him. Not the candidate's job, it was the people's job. We, the people of the United States, were tasked with getting our favorite candidate out there so if the electors would take notice and then vote for our guy. So that's first thing. In the 1820s, a guy named Andrew Jackson, who's also father of the Democratic Party, who believed in pure democracy, felt that was a better system. He was the one that complained and cried and said, well, the people's voice is not being heard. So the system slowly changed right about 1828 through about 1836 during the Andrew Jackson era, from what it was to what it is, where the people would vote and then the electors would traditionally follow what the people voted. Now that said, the elector is not obligated to vote in the manner that the people voted. Because as with in the beginning, that is just a recommendation. Ultimately, it's up to the elector. It's the people trying to convince the elector. Now they do it through voting. They used to do it through lobbying. Okay, so that's that. Now, the way the Electoral College is set up is each state is given a number. That's based on the number of representatives plus the 2 senators that each state has. So, for example, California has 53 members in the House of Representatives and 2 senators. Therefore, they have 55 electoral votes. The electoral votes, therefore, is heavily influenced by the population of the state. However, that said, a state, a smaller, less populated state, the votes, electoral votes in those states are actually stronger than the ones in California, because the way the Electoral College system is set up, those states have a bigger voice than they would have if it was a national popular vote system. This was in order to protect the minority vote, the minority voice, the rural states from being controlled by the more populated, heavily populated areas. That's the reason why. That's a large part of the reason why all of our system was set up the way it was, to protect those minority rural areas from being overpowered by heavily populated areas. For example, our U.S. Senate is 2 senators per state, regardless of population. That gives the rural states just as much power in the Senate as the heavily populated states. There's actually been Democrats recently that have complained about that. I'm trying to remember who it was. I believe it was out of New York, a representative who said, or senator who said, why, it's not right because a senator from North Dakota has as strong a voice as I do from New York. Yes, we're not a democracy. We're not supposed to be a pure democracy. And the Electoral College is our last stance against pure democracy. It protects us from the excesses of democracy. Now, there are a few other reasons why the Electoral College is advantageous, on top of the fact that it protects the voice of the more rural states. It also creates coalition building and national campaigning. If we had only a national popular vote, really the only locations that would matter and would really need to be campaigned in would be the big cities, like the 5 to 6 biggest cities. Everywhere else really wouldn't matter, because it wouldn't matter how you voted in Nebraska. It wouldn't matter how you voted in North Dakota, because those 5 or 6 cities are going to determine the presidency. And so, therefore, there's not a diversity of citizens being appealed to, only the city slickers. I hate to say it that way. I'm a city slicker in Southern California. But, the farmers, the agricultural, the lands in Louisiana, whatever. Those people would not need to be campaigned to. The Electoral College means that all Americans are important. Therefore, the diversity of America, not just the cities, but the rural areas, the suburban areas, the steel country out in Pittsburgh, West Virginia coal miners, the farmers in the Midwest, the loggers in Oregon. All of those people, their vote's important. They're all involved, and you never know really which state is going to be the state that's going to be the one that pushes, the candidate over the 270 mark, now what it is, because it has to be a majority. In this last election, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. Michigan was huge. The time before it was Florida. Iowa, there wouldn't be an Iowa caucus. There would not be a New Hampshire primary. No one would care if it was a national popular vote, because their votes really wouldn't matter. It all come down to the populated areas, and then the populated areas will be putting their person in, and in a sense controlling the rural areas. Do we really want the heavily populated areas to have that much power and rule over the rural areas, dictating to the rural areas with their representation what the rural areas can or can't do? I took a note here because there's a couple of other things also, as I've done my research, that the Electoral College does. So let's see. Coalition building, national campaigning, across a wide variety of diverse populations in order to win. Every state can be important in the election, which means all votes matter. See, they say, well, national popular election, all votes will matter. All votes will be equal. No. Then, because now, I mean, equal is not equal in this case. If they get their equality, it means that the cities vote the president in. The Electoral College levels the playing field so that the rural states have a voice too. Okay, so any state may be important, which leaves us guessing who may be the state to make a difference, which I just mentioned. Well, here's why this is also important when it comes to Electoral College. It makes it harder to commit voter fraud, since those who would commit such fraud would be guessing on where to commit it. See, in a national popular vote, any fraud influences the vote. But if Florida turns out not to be a factor because, some certain other states went into play in a certain direction, then the voter fraud in Florida wouldn't matter. You would have to guess. Oh, well, we should have committed fraud in that state or that. They're guessing. Now, there is voter fraud in the United States, and I do believe that. But it would be worse if we had a national popular vote. Let's see. Now, that's pretty much all my notes. Now, that said, once again, the Electoral College also is mandated, put into play, not by Article 1, like those arguing saying, oh, the states have, control over the manner procedures. No, that's for the federal legislative elections. But for the presidential election, that does not apply. The manners and procedures are established by Article 2 and altered slightly by a number of amendments. In order to get rid of the Electoral College, if they really wanted to, it would require a constitutional amendment, which would require 3/4 of the states to ratify, and I doubt they'd get enough states to ratify it. Why? Because the only states that would really benefit from a national popular vote would be the states with the biggest cities. California, New York, Illinois, maybe Texas. Nobody else's vote would really matter. Do you really want New York City, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Houston, Chicago, maybe Philadelphia, electing your president for you and everybody else's vote not mattering? Because that's what would happen if we let go of the Electoral College. As you see on one of the displays there right in front of you on this video, it says the states in blue have a smaller population than the city of Los Angeles. Then it shows the city of Los Angeles, itty bitty little red dot. See that? The Electoral College ensures that they have the same voice as the coastal elites. Do you want Los Angeles overpowering all those states with its leftist voting? Do we really want pure democracy? Because here's what pure democracy is. We get rid of the Electoral College. Because we're already heading towards democracy, because the Senate no longer the state legislatures no longer appoint the senators. The counties no longer appoint the state senators, thanks to Reynolds v. Sims in the late 60s Warren Court, which made the states more democratic. Now remember, Article 4, Section 4, it says the United States shall guarantee to each state a Republican form of government, not a democratic form of government, but nonetheless, we're moving in that direction, democracy as it is. You get rid of the Electoral College, we are pretty much there. And then here's what happens. It's majority vote. Majority wins. Do you really want that? Because in a pure democracy, where it is majority wins, that's where 51% can vote away the rights of the other 49%. And judging by the way people vote, I really don't want to give them that much power. The Electoral College protects us from mob rule, protects us from pure democracy, protects us from the cities dictating to the rest of the country how they have to run their lives. Could you imagine the water usage limits in California? You're not allowed to use a plastic straw laws in California and New York. The limits on how much soda you're allowed to drink in New York. You imagine those kinds of tyrannical laws being applied everywhere? I mean, we already have little Venezuelas in California and New York and the Chicago area and the Detroit area. Do we really want that kind of tyrannical mentality spreading across the United States because we gave the national popular vote, in other words, the presidential election, to the cities? And then what's next? Are they then going to eliminate the Senate or change it so that the number of senators is now proportionate to population like the House? Is that what's next? After you lose the electoral vote? How soon, after you lose the Electoral College, does America succumb to tyranny? I'm here to tell you it'd be very fast. It is imperative, number one, that we hang on to the Electoral College, and number two, thank you, sir, for the email from Nevada. They do not have, the state's doing what they're doing, saying, oh, our electoral votes are just going to go to whatever the national popular vote is. No. The electors and how the electors are supposed to vote and all that is established by Article 2, not by Article 1. Article 1 applies to the legislative vote. The manners and procedures of the vote for Congress, Senate, and House is up to the states, with Congress being allowed to pass laws to change it if necessary. But the Electoral College, that's mandated by Article 2, and then it has been adjusted by subsequent amendments. The states can't just say, oh, we're going to do it this way. There needs to be an amendment. You want to get rid of the Electoral College? Propose an amendment. But I'm going to tell you right now, we eliminate the Electoral College, we're done. Because pure democracy will envelop this country and destroy it. My name is Douglas V. Gibbs. Thanks for spending the time with me. Stay safe, and as always, stay constitutional. We'll see you next time.